The U.S. defeated all the enemies it's faced, except one, a single tribe that refused to break no matter what was thrown at them. No surrender, no treaty, no defeat. Who were they? And what made them unstoppable when everyone else fell? The Seminoles didn't wake up one morning and decide to become America's most wanted. They were originally part of the Creek Confederacy, mainly lower Creeks who moved south looking for better opportunities. Like any good moving company, they packed light and headed for warmer weather. This southern migration became their salvation when the Creek Wars ended badly for Native Americans. Entire groups of survivors fled into Florida, choosing swamps over surrender. Florida was like that corner of the garage where you store things you don't want to deal with right now. The Seminoles found the perfect place to rebuild their lives without interference, which made the United States government nervous. Two critical reasons turned the Seminoles into a major threat. First, they refused to roll over when Americans wanted their land. They were basically the neighbors who wouldn't sell their house to make room for a shopping mall. But this resistance was nothing compared to their second crime against American interests. The real problem was that they protected escaped slaves. Black Americans who ran away from plantations found safety with the Seminoles, who welcomed them as equals. For a country built on slavery, this was like finding out your quiet neighbor was running an underground freedom railroad. This dangerous combination became impossible to ignore when Spain handed Florida over to the United States in 1821. The Indian Removal Act of 1830 made the government's intentions crystal clear. The Seminoles looked at this demand and essentially said thanks, but no thanks. Their refusal turned them into the primary target of federal military campaigns that had successfully removed other tribes through treaties, bribes, and violence. But the Seminoles had advantages that other tribes lacked. They controlled terrain perfect for guerrilla warfare and had allies who faced slavery or death if captured. What made them so dangerous wasn't just their fighting skills, but who they really were as a people. Seminoles were more like a successful refugee camp that decided to become a nation. This unique origin shaped everything about their society. The group included Creek refugees fleeing military defeat, escaped African slaves who became Black Seminoles, and other Native American groups seeking sanctuary. It was like a multicultural community center, except everyone was armed and excellent at swamp survival. Their diverse backgrounds created a society spread across small communities throughout the wetlands. Each village was specifically adapted to survive in swamps that would kill most people within a week. Think of it as extreme camping that lasted for generations. The strategic thinking extended to their government structure. They were organized under independent bands rather than one central authority. It was like having multiple CEOs running different departments of the same survival company. This loose organization became one of their greatest military advantages. When American forces defeated one band, 4 others were still operating independently. Despite their reputation as fierce warriors, the Seminoles were also smart business people. They traded with American settlers and Caribbean merchants, proving they weren't isolationists hiding from the world. What truly set them apart was their attitude toward newcomers. If you came in peace and proved yourself useful, you could become part of the community. If you showed up looking for trouble, you'd probably become alligator food. The Black Seminoles were especially crucial because they understood both cultures, spoke multiple languages, and had lived as slaves. For them, the coming conflict wasn't just about politics. This was about freedom versus slavery, life versus death. The diverse, scattered, and determined society the Seminoles had built was about to face its ultimate test. The First Seminole War kicked off in 1817 when a future president decided to make his mark. It was basically a military audition that involved invading another country without permission. This aggressive approach set the tone for everything that followed. American forces burned villages and pushed deeper into Seminole territory, forcing Spain to hand over Florida shortly after. But this early success made American leaders overconfident about what would come next. The real challenge began with the Second Seminole War, lasting from 1835 to 1842. 7 brutal years that would test everything America thought it knew about warfare. That's longer than most people stay in one job, except this job involved getting shot at daily. This became the longest and most expensive Indian War in American history, with an estimated 1,500 American soldiers killed. The financial cost exceeded $30 million. The government spent enough money to buy several small countries just to move a few hundred people. These staggering costs resulted from the Seminoles' revolutionary approach to warfare. They used hit-and-run tactics and swamp knowledge to avoid large battles where American numerical superiority would matter. When the army showed up with cannons and cavalry, the Seminoles had already vanished into the wetlands like ghosts. This invisible enemy frustrated American military leaders who were trained for conventional European-style warfare. The Seminoles fought in small, mobile groups that could disappear faster than you could reload a musket. The Seminoles had apparently never read the military handbook about fighting fair. The terrain became the Seminoles' greatest weapon. Dense swamps, hidden waterways, and endless forests provided perfect cover for ambushes. American soldiers struggled through mud and water while battling mosquitoes, snakes, and tropical diseases that killed more men than bullets. Desperate to end the embarrassing conflict, the Army tried everything they could imagine. They built forts throughout Florida, brought in bloodhounds from Cuba to track warriors, hired scouts from other tribes, and even attempted to drain parts of the Everglades. It was like trying to catch fog with a butterfly net. The war dragged on because every time the Army thought they had won, new Seminole attacks proved otherwise. Villages that seemed empty suddenly erupted with gunfire. Supply trains disappeared without a trace. Soldiers found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to know their every move. Eventually, many Seminoles were captured through trickery or agreed to move west, but several hundred remained hidden in the deepest swamps. The government declared victory, but everyone knew the Seminoles had never actually surrendered. The Third Seminole War from 1855 to 1858 was smaller but equally frustrating for American forces. In 1858, the military finally gave up active pursuit of the remaining Seminoles. The wars were over, but they had created something more dangerous than any army, a legend that would inspire one extraordinary leader. The military success of the Seminoles didn't happen by accident. It required exceptional leadership, and their most famous leader was Osceola, who embodied everything that made them so difficult to defeat. He was basically the original mixed-heritage kid who grew up to become everyone's worst nightmare. Osceola's mixed background perfectly represented the diverse Seminole society, but his leadership style was purely his own creation. He earned influence through pure determination and his ability to organize resistance when everyone else wanted to give up. While other leaders were looking for exit strategies, Osceola was planning the next battle. This fighting spirit became essential when American pressure intensified. The Treaty of Payne's Landing in 1832 was supposed to settle everything. The Seminoles were expected to pack up and move west like obedient children. Osceola's opposition wasn't just political, it was personal and deadly serious. He opposed the treaty so strongly that he organized the killing of a pro-removal chief in 1835. The leader's uncompromising stance reflected his clear understanding of what was really at stake. Osceola knew that any deal with America would end with his people dead or enslaved. He was essentially the guy who read the fine print and realized the contract was a death sentence written in fancy language. Unfortunately, even brilliant leaders make fatal mistakes. In 1837, Osceola agreed to attend peace talks under a white flag of truce. This betrayal revealed everything about American tactics. They imprisoned Osceola in harsh conditions where he became seriously ill and died in 1838, still refusing to sign any surrender document. Osceola's capture under a flag of truce became one of the most shameful episodes in American military history. Even in death, his influence would prove unstoppable. But the real test was what would happen to his people without him. The death of their greatest leader could have destroyed Seminole resistance, but instead, it strengthened their determination to survive. After the wars ended, roughly 300 to 500 Seminoles remained in southern Florida. They had become the ultimate hide-and-seek champions, except the stakes were life and death instead of playground bragging rights. These survivors proved that their leader's sacrifice hadn't been in vain by creating a new kind of existence. They made homes in the Everglades and Big Cypress Swamp, living in camps invisible to outsiders. The Seminoles turned swamp living into a survival masterclass. This incredible survival knowledge became their shield against the outside world. For decades, they avoided any contact with the American government. It was the longest game of hide-and-seek in history. Their invisibility allowed them to maintain traditional lifestyles. The Seminoles continued hunting, fishing, and small-scale farming, but they also proved their business skills by developing trade relationships with settlers and Caribbean merchants. Living in the wetlands meant dealing with mosquitoes, snakes, alligators, hurricanes, and tropical diseases daily. The Seminoles didn't need gym memberships. Staying alive was their full-time workout. The American government essentially pretended they didn't exist for almost a century. But everything changed in 1957 when the Seminole tribe received official recognition. But here's where the story gets interesting. The officially recognized Seminole tribe didn't just survive modern life. They went from hiding in swamps to running businesses that would make major corporations jealous. The Seminoles developed successful enterprises in cattle, tourism, and gaming. Their ultimate achievement was purchasing Hard Rock International, which became a major global brand. But their incredible journey from swamp survivors to business moguls was just the beginning of something even more remarkable. The transformation from swamp survivors to business moguls represents the latest chapter in a story that changed American history forever. They wrote their own ending to a story that was supposed to end with their destruction. This unique achievement starts with a simple but powerful fact. They remain the only tribe that never signed a formal peace treaty with America. It's like being the only student in school who never had to apologize to the principal, even though everyone expected you to get expelled. Their continued resistance is reflected in what they call themselves today. The tribe still uses the name the Unconquered People. This evidence impressed even their former enemies. American military leaders eventually admitted they had learned valuable lessons about fighting mobile enemies in difficult terrain. The Seminoles had accidentally written the textbook on guerrilla warfare. The personal story of their greatest leader became equally influential in American culture. He became a folk hero whose name appears on schools, towns, and sports teams across the country. The man who died in an American prison became more famous than most presidents. This cultural impact extends to the modern Seminole success story. Today's Seminole tribe manages major international businesses while maintaining traditional ceremonies. Their business empire has revolutionized Native American economics. Hard Rock International now operates entertainment venues in dozens of countries. But perhaps the most important part of their legacy reaches far beyond business success. They proved that small groups of determined people can resist overwhelming force and not just survive, but thrive. They remain the only tribe the United States couldn't defeat, and that victory belongs to them forever.